Hello, and welcome once again to Storytime with Oliver Covington. This week's story is called It's Almost Closing Time. This story has not yet appeared in print, but will be in my next collection of short stories. Please like and subscribe and enjoy. Fat, arthritic fingers fumbled in the dark, trying to reach the phone. The bottles of blood pressure medicine, cholesterol medicine, and low-dose aspirin all became casualties, falling to their doom between the twin bed and the pressboard night table. Hello? The voice was thick with sleep and a dry tongue from snoring. Harlan, is that you? The voice slithered over the phone lines in a harsh whisper. Maud? Sleepiness turned to confusion. He had not spoken to her since her Aunt Marcia died nearly 5 years prior. Harlan, you know what today is, right? He would have been 21 today. The words seemed to slip through the tiny holes in the receiver and stab through his ear directly into his brain. All at once, the pain in his chest was present. The dull ache radiated through him like it was in his blood, making sure every cell in his body was affected. Maud, he glanced at the clock radio. It's 3 a.m. Can we talk about this? She cut him off. Meet me for a drink at our place. Come on, Harlan, a drink for his birthday. The sadness was causing her voice to quiver like jello. He hated jello. Maud, it's late. She interrupted again. I can't be in this house 1 second longer. We have time for a drink before last call. Come on, please, Harlan. I've never asked you for anything. Not since she couldn't finish the sentence. Harlan gave an exasperated sigh and surrendered to the request, much like he had surrendered to most things in life. Be there in 15 minutes, he said, before placing the phone back into its cradle. He sat up, rubbed his stubbled face with his calloused hands, and got to his feet. Ungluing his balls from his thigh on his way to the bathroom, he took a piss and then slipped a pair of black sweatpants with a marinara stain on them over his off-white, nearly gray, boxer shorts decorated with little fleur-de-lis. He grabbed a pack of cigarettes, his lighter, and his keys, and shoved them into the various pockets of his worn-out faded gray overcoat, before walking out the door of his apartment over the dry cleaners. As he walked down the stairs, he realized he was still wearing his slippers. He didn't give a fuck. He arrived at Sully's Seaside Bar and Grill about 10 minutes later. He tossed the cab driver a $10 bill on the $7 fare and slammed the door as he got out. The driver muttered something that sounded like he was clearing his throat and drove off. He looked up at the buzzing, half-working neon sign. Sully's had seen better days. He gripped the tarnished brass door handle, wondered if he was making a huge mistake, and pulled the door open. The smell of stale cigarette smoke, old beer, the voice of Neil Diamond from the tinny speakers of an old jukebox, and God knows what else hit him, as he stepped into a tiny corner of his past life. He was suddenly reminded of a time before his soul ached. The floor was sticky and covered with peanut shells and cigarette butts. He looked around the dank hole in the wall and saw her sitting at a corner table. Her gray-brown hair was piled atop her head haphazardly in such a way that the slightest breeze would set it free. She was pale. He could see that even in dim lighting. She was wearing sneakers and a flannel nightgown under a raincoat. She was slowly exhaling the smoke of her Virginia Slim 120 cigarette through her nose when she saw him approaching. She half stood, taking both his hands into hers. It's good to see you. She gently kissed Harlan's stubbled cheek, and the two of them sat down at the table. Harlan reached into his pocket and lit one of his own cigarettes and exhaled thoughtfully. The two of them sat silently smoking for a few seconds, examining the physical toll the years had taken on them. They mentally noted the emotional scars filling in the pieces they ripped out of each other during those long months after it happened, and they each knew instinctively that some of the ripped-out places were never healed. The silence was broken by the presence of a waitress in an off-the-shoulder white blouse, a name tag stating the shirt was named Babs, a miniskirt, and overly abused fishnet stockings. She clunked down 2 glasses containing scotch on the rocks, turned, and went to go see about the man who was face down at another table. Her back turned towards them, revealing a mole on her shoulder that should probably get looked at. Maud held up her glass, closed her eyes. Happy birthday. Harlan echoed the sentiment, and they clinked their glasses together and downed the drinks in one. Harlan held up 2 fingers to the bartender, and the bartender nodded in acknowledgement. They made small talk, telling each other the horror stories that their lives had become since they split all those years ago, only stopping briefly when the waitress brought the new round of drinks over. They smoked and drank and talked and maybe smiled once or twice for a second. It was almost like old times. The spell was broken by the sudden silence from the jukebox as it went dark in the middle of an Air Supply song, and that silence being filled by the bartender's loud, too many cigarettes voice declaring last call folks. Maud ordered 2 more drinks, and the waitress brought them over quickly along with their tab. Maud reached for her pocketbook, and Harlan reached for his wallet, and they both threw a few $20 bills on the table before downing their last drinks and exiting Sully's seaside bar and grill. They had started to go their separate ways when they both heard the waves crashing against the shore. It startled them for a second as subconsciously they ignored the sound when they had each arrived. It made them jump, as would a loud sneeze in a library. Maud looked suddenly as if she was punched in the gut, and Harlan caught her as her legs buckled. She hated that sound. He hated that sound. That sound brought it all back for them both. It was the clarion call of that fateful day. It was the last day that either one of them was an actual person and not a shadow. Harlan placed his hand in Maud's, their fingers interweaving in solidarity as he pulled her towards the beach. "Let's say goodbye once and for all, Maudie." She sniffled a few times, the tears flowing freely now as they slowly made their way down to the shore. The walk to the shore wasn't more than 15 feet, but it felt like miles. The sand clawing at their feet, hindering their movements as if to say no, stop, go back. They kept on. Maud and Harlan were both openly sobbing as they finally reached the shoreline. They looked out into the vast blackness that was the nighttime sea barely making out its undulating hatred of them, both as it smashed against the shore and ran up over their feet. As the sun began its tedious climb into the morning sky, rising slowly from its secret chamber below the water, the horizon seemingly buckling under the weight, a man walked the shoreline waving a metal detector back and forth, hoping to find something, anything to add some excitement to his day. He stumbled upon 2 piles of clothes sitting on the sand. He picked up the wallet, the pocketbook, and the 2 half-full packs of cigarettes that were next to them, and seeing no one was around, slipped them into his backpack. The footprints leading out into the cold, unforgiving, hateful sea had already been washed away by the incoming tide.